This week in Roy magazine, the stress debate continues with former Nine glamour personality Graham Kennedy challenging cricket guru Tony Gregg to an old-fashioned carpet-laying competition. Tim Fisher gives us a recipe for cooking your own leg. Alan Border reveals his secret fear. Sharon Stone says in an exclusive, Aussie Joe will do me. Olympic boss Juan Antonio Samaranch in a brutal frank exchange says Sydney stinks, and local Olympic bid boss Rod McGeoch has BO. Yana Vent eats her own cat to raise $1 million for charity. All this and more in this week's Roy magazine. Out now with David Boone's new carport on the front cover.
Roy, the Melbourne Cup.
Just before we get there, I was just going to say, I think too that I think women prefer a fat heavyweight. I think women enjoy the sight of a fit fat man. With you, just to take your sumos a little bit further, they enjoy a very rich diet of tomfoolery in the bedroom stakes with many members of the opposite sex. They're highly successful, in Darwinian terms, breeding machine
Stock. Yes, obviously, the trouser comes off first in the...
and the fatter the better.
Yeah, well, it's a look.
Well,
you got
to have very fat plus fat, that is an attractive look, isn't it?
It certainly is, Roy. And obviously you've got to remember also that people see often weight about the body as a sign of success.
Oh, yes. Sign of wealth and charm and good humour.
Yeah, relaxation.
Liveliness.
And we go through a stage, obviously, which may be seen historically as rather a atypical part. If you look at Rubens's gear, which obviously draws a bead straight at your sumo wrestler.
He was a realist for his day.
Yes, and draws a bead straight at your sumo wrestler now.
Oh, yes.
Rather than the front of the Dolly magazine.
Oh, yeah. Look, the media, I think, has just buggered up nature completely. I think, in terms of your natural selection, up until now, if you go back ever since humans ceased to be, say, hunter-gatherers, once we settled down, growing, had plenty of food, rotated our crops, moved from slash and burn to cultivation plus fallow, plus cultivation plus fallow, mixing your fields, etc., people lumping together in groups, building walls, living together, close proximity, sharing walls with neighbours, etc., having access to meeting a lot of people. I think ever since that time, and we're going back 50, 60,000 years, I suppose, that people have got fatter and fatter. And quite rightly so, with plenty of food and not have to walk too far to get it. Your fat people really are the most successful end of your breeding stock. And I think the last few years, with media domination trying to impose a different body shape on humans, it doesn't surprise me that birth rates are going down. I think that the time for the fat person is coming back.
Yes.
Think fat.
And live longer.
Roy,
could I live
healthier at least. Live fatter.
Live better. And obviously, apart from the tool work, I'm just wondering, Roy...
your tool work improves, they say, the fatter you are.
The bigger you are.
The bigger you are.
In the buttocks.
Yeah, well...
the better it is at the front.
Well, if you've got a bigger fulcrum.
Yeah, of course, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes, I see your point. Now, Roy, I'm just wondering, this is something I'd like to give to Cess and Bill Morty and so on. I'm just wondering about a bout between a sumo wrestler and a heavyweight boxer. I don't know whether that's been tried for a very long time, but I could see people being interested in that.
Didn't Muhammad fight a Japanese wrestler in Japan?
I thought it was, a judo expert. Karate expert.
No, I think it might have been the wrestling champion, because the bloke spent a lot of time trying to grab Muhammad around the leg, and Muhammad spent a long time just
trying to punch him in the back of the head.
Yes, it was a very disappointing
spectacle.
Neither of them were fat enough either for mine.
No, but I was going to say, George Foreman v. the boy out of Hawaii. The sumo wrestler from Hawaii.
Let's call him Nagoya for want of another word.
Yeah.
Mitsaku.
Yes. He's very big, very fit and very fat.
He's your Hawaiian, but Tokyo-based sumo champion.
That's right.
And a delightful bloke. I don't think I've met a fatter bloke in my life.
Or a funnier bloke.
Or a happier bloke, or a more successful breeder. He's got it all, hasn't he? And so fat. Well... I mean, you'd have to change your architraves in your normal house.
You would.
If Matsuka was lobbying
a regular
for
visitor.
Yeah.
Obviously, if he just came once.
You'd have to have a few cattle
in
the backyard in case he got peckish. Wouldn't you?
Well, you'd have to have that extra freezer capacity. And I was going to say, if he came every so often, you'd obviously have some sort of way of wedging him through the doors, but obviously if it was a regular visitor...
You'd meet him out in the front yard, I think, and you'd probably spend most of your time talking out
outside
there,
the house.
hoping he doesn't say, "Could I have a look at your
New carpet.
Yeah.
Or how's the kiddies' nursery coming on? I think that's a possibility, though. You know, the Nagoya v George Foreman. I mean, I think you'd have to have some rules. You know, no, obviously they couldn't grab around the legs because I think the art in sumo wrestling is to pull them by the shorts and heave them out of the ring.
It is.
But
well,
to imagine
you'd
that
have
with
back to
George
back.
punching.
Back-to-back bouts. You'd put gloves on the sumo kitty, on Matsuka. You'd put gloves on him and they'd have 12 rounds or 10 rounds.
Oh, yes, I see what you mean. And then
meet a
take the gloves off.
fortnight later, or a week later, or the following night, or later that night.
Later that night, yeah.
They take the gloves off, and George puts on the funny nappy
and away they
gets
go.
hurled out of the ring time after time after time, as he would, you'd imagine. But you imagine the kitty might be a little, your Matsuka, Nagoya kitty, might be a little bit worse for wear with cut eyes. And
It'd be an important toss to win, wouldn't it?
I think so. Mind you, I don't think it takes that much out of you just being pushed out. See, George would be cagey.
He'd learn.
He'd be prepared to wear being thrown off the ring, out of the ring without, wouldn't worry him too much.
No.
Out 3 times, big tickle. He's got 12 rounds to pummel him later on.
Well, I was going to say, obviously,
Pummel the fatty.
It's the fat people that work on it. In the ring there, it's almost a loss of face.
Yes.
It's very hard to compute that with if everybody's in for $1 million each.
Yeah.
People don't mind losing for a few million. I mean, obviously, you'd rather win. But,
George would be tickle pink if he could throw Nagoya Matsuka out of the ring a couple of times pull his underpants down, or pull his nappy down, and George might bring a whole new mindset.
Well, that's true.
New techniques.
Yeah.
Instead of grappling, pulling it up his date.
Pulling it up, he might pull it down.
He might pull it up the front way.
Or pull it down. So in other words, he lunges at it and pulls it down. And exposes a little bit of crack.
Yeah.
And gets people laughing.
Yeah.
Enormous
loss of face.
Yeah.
Loss of 2 faces.
Or 2 moons.
But George's disadvantage would be, I don't think George Foreman knows how to put the testicles up inside the cavity, unlike your Nagoya Mutsaku.
Yeah. Well, that is an old skill.
Well, it's a skill you can't learn overnight, unfortunately. I mean, George could start training now. He might be ready. He might be able to do it in a few... But it's a pretty daunting thing. I don't know if you've ever tried it yourself. You don't know where to start. You just got to sit back, legs akimbo, and push a bit, I suppose. I suppose that's how you'd start. But it's pretty...
there'd be books. Good idea of how to start. And obviously, sumo traditions are handed on more or less oral.
There might be someone who could do it for you.
No, true.
I don't know. Matsuko Nagoya
could do it for George.
Could do it. He'd just punch him up, but give himself an advantage. But surely there must be specialists who do it for you. Are you ready, sir, for your testicle insertion? Yep. Big George.
Using your patented slave and smear system, what do you like in the Melbourne Cup for 1993?
Well, it looks like Dancing Lord first, Al Pompey second, and Azram third.
Well, that's a tremendous thought from Roy there.
That
now,
would be a fillip, though, wouldn't it, for Harry? What if
Well,
Harry really
I'd
brought
love-
it home?
I'd love
What
to
if
see
something
Harry.
snapped in Harry's mind
And he
decided-
won.
No, and he decided not to break, or he forgot to break.
well, that's what I mean, and wins.
If something snapped, and he just
Kept going.
kept going.
Yeah, instead of pulling it up at about the 1,000-metre mark and
He
slowing
just-
it right at the back.
He actually got it to accelerate.
That'd be a change of a career lifestyle. And they're at the barrier now. They're starting to go in, and now Pompey and Drum Taps are equal favourites downstairs. And obviously all the betting is done. The 400 billion million that is on this race around the world is waiting to see how it turns out. And, gee, I get excited every time I see these horses go into the barrier.
Yep.
Now, Roy, obviously your weight has prohibited a ride, but I'm very pleased to say the St John's ambulance are letting you travel in the ambulance
I'll be in the
round
ambulance
following
in the back.
Okay, well, that'll be tremendous. But your thoughts is going in. Obviously, you've been here before on lots of great rides.
All right. Well, I think. Look, I think
what's going through the jockey's mind?
Well, what's going through the jockey's mind is you can't win from 3 out. You've got to get to the rails as quickly as possible, and that's where these English horses are going to find themselves boxed in. Get in there as quickly as possible and know when to come out. That's the thing. I'm going to go into the car now.
All righto, well, we're ready for the running of the 1993 Melbourne Cup. Thanks, Roy. Good fun in the car there in the ambulance with 3,200 metres to go of sheer equine madness, and there's a lot of mad people here on course, and I love to say, they're off, Roy, now. Tremendous start. One right on the outside, got a really terrific kick on, and they're settling down. I know Paddy Laylaw said take it easy for the first 2,000 metres and then can whip the bleeding daylights out of them. As they settle down now and come up almost on the course proper, it's a chance for the lead. Looks to me as though it's slight chance in the lead. Slight chance kicking forward by a length or two. I can see the white bandages of Tennessee Jack in a prominent position as well. And all up there is Drum Taps in second place. And now a charge across. Now looks to me as though my Drum Taps taking over the lead into first place now as they come up onto the course proper. I can see Roy in the ambulance. Roy, what's your vantage point there?
Yes, thanks very much, HG. Drum Taps is looking very, very stupid going out so early from here, it seems to me, old son. But the dates look good.
Fryer in the lead now, along with Drum Taps in the firing line, and Fryer just slightly overtaken by looks to me of a horse like might be up there as well, together with Our Tristelite and Great Vintage in a prominent position. Fryer locked away on the rails. Looks to me as though Our Tristelite might be shuffled back to fourth, and as they go round now, they settle themselves and they pass the judge, and they've got one complete circuit of this magnificent course at Flemington to go. It looks like Tiaka Nick now, as Roy predicted, in the lead, taking over the running, with Fryer up there as well, and Sam coming into it nicely in about fourth or fifth position, putting on a bit of a forward move. Roy, what's the view from the ambulance like?
Well, I've never seen a slower bloody race in my life, HG, I must say. The pace is very, very slow. It doesn't surprise me now to see an English import win this race. This is turning into an English race.
How's Harry White going, Roy? Has he got the handbrake on?
He's got the handbrake on full bore and the accelerator on full bore, which is tearing the horse apart, and I've just got date gear coming out all over me.
Well, Tiaka and Nick now setting a firm place in front as they go on the Maribyrnong Riverside. Looks to me as though it might be Tiaka and Nick, Drum Taps, and then also up there in the firing line, Fryer and the Phantom, along with Cavalieri putting in a bit of a run from rear of the field and making up many lengths. Also up there is Field Officer Silk Ali giving back a tremendous side. He's buxed away in on the rails as Tiaka and Nick leaves the 1,400 metre pole. Behind, it's bowling along in very attractive fashion, and Frontier Boy and the Phantom and Tiaka filling up the minor places in behind Fryer and Tiaka and Nick, who are starting to really quicken the pace in front. I think it's just a suicide mission on the part of Fryer and Tiaka and Nick, right?
Yes, I think you're right there, HG. They just went out too fast, too early. But Diane Ogle, what a beautiful ride at this stage. And the pace is increasing, HG. The pace is increasing, and I think Harry's gone. I think Harry White is finished. I think this is Harry White's last ride. I hope Harry doesn't fall off. But it would be a beautiful way to go if he ended up in the ambulance with me.
800 metres left to run in the big one this year, and it's still Tiaka Nick in front of Frontier Bay. Fryer waiting for a run, and then, of course, Drum Taps on the inside there. It's Tiaka Nick as they come up onto the point of the turn now, and many chances in the big one. I think Tiaka Nick might drop off here. Frontier Boy up there, so far it's got a very good chance with Fryer, D.A. Hayes and the Phantom, and then Drum Taps. Now they turn for home, and it's Tiaka Nick slugging it out there. I don't know what can make an impression on here. Frontier Boy, Challenger, and Fryer there as well, but Tiaka Nick, the Gay Waterhouse conveyance, unless something can produce a riveting run, is going to get away with the cup in 93. Tiaka Nick and Tennessee Jack's making a bit of a challenge. Here comes one down the outside in the yellow and green. Looks like it's Vintage Crop. Vintage Crop going home a bit the better now. What a tremendous run by the international horse. Vintage Crop coming with a withering run. Runs away with a cup in 93. What a magnificent run there from Vintage Crop. And let's see, Vintage Crop, Tiaka Nick, and we'll have to wait for third place. That was a blanket finish there. Roy, what did you think of it?
Yes, a beautiful race, HG. What a marvellous, marvellous race. And that Vintage Crop, take nothing away from it. Sure, it was important, but as we said earlier, no surprises really, because it was fulfilling the conditions here being very, very English conditions or Irish conditions. You know, I woke up this morning and all I could sense was Blarney. It just looked like Belfast for mine, the course here at Melbourne. And for Vintage Crop, it must have woken up thinking it was at home and behaved accordingly. A beautiful ride, a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful ride. And isn't that a terrific thing? This has put the Melbourne Cup, I think, not only on the national map, not only on the Asian map, but on the international map, because that horse is going to go back to Ireland and the British Isles and Europe and tell such stories about Melbourne that this event, I think, is going to go through the roof. Good. Well, a week that's seen Australia assert itself as a serious Asian country, with the Prime Minister accusing Malaysia's Dr. Maha Tia of being a recalcitrant. Can I add, just to support the Prime Minister here, the terms applied to Dr. Maha Tia? Take any of your pick, or any you like, or put them all together. Dork, goose, clown, fathead, sook, loser, idiot, minx, butt plug, and a hopeless, bloated, cheating, devil-worshipping, corrupt, irrelevant tosspot. Are you listening, my heart here? Tosspot, butt plug, goose, dork, hopeless, joke. There. See what you can do with that, Gareth. The shark flies in and gets sick. The shark declares he wants to be number one again. The shark declares that Dr. Maha Tia is an irrelevant tosspot and butt plug.
Sporting life, it's time to bring forward Rampaging Royce Levin to the Youth Network, Mike. A man who thrilled them in the ice skating pairs at Albertville midweek. When this man took to the ice with an Australian merino sheep, the crowd knew they were in for something very, very special. Roy and the sheep did the compulsories in the short program in a doddle, and when he hurled the beast in the air for the triple axel and simply pulled out a blade and slaughtered it, well, the crowd went wild. And when he returned to scale, with a very attractively ranged tray of hogget shoulder chops and a couple of legs of lamb, cherry ripe for the oven, well, once again the crowd went wild and gave the big man gold, gold, gold. It was the sort of program you could get involved with. And with the beautiful accompaniment of I Like It Both Ways, the Jane Fonda orchestral mix, which for mine has never sounded better, well, I heard it described by one authoritative cricket as nice. Here he is now, fresh from his gold pair's success, rampaging Royce Levin ahead just through the week, son.
Thank you very much, H.C. Nelson. Well, it's been a week of tossing about Heisenberg's uncertainty principle of running the quantum parallel universe idea up the flagpole, and it's a winner for mine. And I'm wondering if it is to be true, whether in one of the other universes, Wally Lewis would be running out yet again at Lang Park, whether the other Deke would be thinking there was still another marathon in him, or whether the other Joe Bushner would be selling the vineyard in the Hunter Valley. Diane Ogle comes 21st out of 24 in the luge at Albertville. Diane, I saw the event, and full credit to you. Remember, Diane doesn't come from an alpine country. She comes from the northern suburbs of Sydney. There's not many luge tracks around there, and I think the Wahroonga Council should have a bit of a look at itself. I'd like to see one around Kalara. I think a luge track there would be fantastic. And obviously there's a growing need amongst the kiddies there to get involved in the luge. And I would certainly, look, with a bit of practice, I think Diane Ogle could well be right up there with Austria's Neuner sisters. I think the Neuners have done a terrific job for Austria. And Diane, I know you've made use of their locker rooms, and they've let you, be part of the Austrian team, and I think that's terrific. But I think Australia has got to look seriously at itself if it's going to be taken seriously in the luge. But 21st out of 24, and remember that Diane Ogle was within a second, was within a second of the winning Neuner sisters. Don't forget that. Even though HG and myself on a surfboard would be within a second as well, doesn't matter. She was within a second. Pat, you know Fergie, we know Fergie and Andrew very, very well indeed. And I think it wasn't so long ago, HG, that you and I had to leave the room. So hot was the atmosphere and so hot was the physical nature of the relationship between the two. We were just sitting down. It was the four of us. We were just having, drinking, sipping our aperitif, and we were having a couple of, bit of jats with smoked oysters on top. And one thing, we were just sitting there talking, as one does, and I found very, very swiftly that you and I were just talking to each other, and those two were under the table doing things that one normally doesn't associate with a jats and a smoked oyster. And that was fine. It didn't worry me. We just left the room very, very quietly, and Fergie phoned 2 days later and apologised. Now, this business about separate bedrooms, I don't know any royal couple that don't have separate bedrooms. You've got a big bloody house. You've got to fill it up with something. Fergie likes to read late at night. Andrew doesn't, because he's got to get up early because he's been picked up. He's been picked up and taken on the boats to do a bit of that sort of gear where they put they run a rope from one boat to another, and he's got to swing across. And you don't want to do that when you're tired. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they've got the separate rooms. I know with Steve Wyatt that Andrew, and he said to me that he felt that it would freshen her up, having someone that could introduce her to styles of swimming, he put it, that she hadn't been used to. In the same way, he said to me that he didn't mind putting his toe in waters foreign, was the way he described it to me, as a way of keeping him fresh. And he said to me, after I've been away on a bit of a voyage, I come back and it's like two new people meeting each other with ideas and techniques and skills that they haven't recognised before. He's all for it. It's what I call a very 90s sort of relationship.
Yes.
His relationship's gone by, 70s relationships, 60s, 50s relationships. 50s relationships perhaps represents the nadir of relationships, in as much as one stayed very much true to the course. But with a 90s relationship, what we call open house relationship, windows open relationship, back door, front door, everything open sort of lights always on sort of relationship.
Someone always home.
Someone always home relationship. Guests always welcome. Welcome mat always out at the ready and freshly swept, so to speak, sort of relationship. that they enjoy, I think we've got to apply different standards that don't really equate with the Dempster view. I think he comes to it from a very 50s position, a very rigid, a very fixed ideas position, and they're far too narrow. I think, Fergie and Andrew are far broader than that.
Yes. I would like to ask you comments, though. Maybe you could relate the problem of the photographs and the, those at the night out with Steve at her feet. And then, of course, the 1,000, probably about 1,400 all up, photographs at the pheasant shoot.
Well, look, I think, some of the pheasant gear was distasteful, because I'm not into that. No. And that's fine. There are lots of different cultural things that I can accept, that, that's the way cultures behave, but I don't relate to it personally. And, I've obviously been to the Ganges, for example, and seen a lot of people, duck in and have a bit of a splash when there've been, often dead cows and dead people coming down and brushing into them while they are having a bit of a rub down. And I think, well, that's fine, but it doesn't appeal to me. In the same way, I've been to ashrams, where I've been looking at the Bowen technique, for example, or the Alexander technique, or any number of techniques, just to keep the hand in, so to speak, in learning new ideas, not to become a Dempster fixed idea sort of person. And I've been, in places where people have got out of bed first thing in the morning and they've released the bladder into a bottle and drunk it. Now, that's fine for them, but it does not appeal to me. And I just accept them and don't love them any the less for the doing of it, but I'm not prepared to embark upon that sort of... it just doesn't work for me. Right. Now, with the pheasants, I felt the same, that sure, I suppose if I got my mind halfway around it, I could accept that a dead and dying pheasant shot could be an erotic image. For me, it isn't. Call me weird, call me old-fashioned, call me Royce Levin, if you like, but I cannot be persuaded. I am put off by the sounds of a pheasant with its lung punctured, gasping for air, gasping for life. I don't find that an aphrodisiac, either orally, visually, or tactilely. Whereas, the Duchess of York, especially in the company of one white, Steve full stop, finds that very arousal-making. Now, that's the line and length of the photographs. It might be unsettling for some with different sensibilities, but I think you've got to approach these things with a very, very open mind.
Yes. I did think, though, the series, though, that... caught my eye was the ones
with the fish.
With the fish, yes.
The mulloway.
The mulloway.
And the pheasant.
And the pheasant in the same... They ended up, say, about, I'm talking about photo 179 through to about 344. And basically, Steve, blows them away so you can't recognise the bit that they were lying on.
You can't pick the mullah from the duck.
That's
or
right.
The pheasant.
That's right. And because there's tiny little grape shot all through it. And in the end, flesh just looks alike.
Yeah. It's very sculptural, though, isn't it?
It's very... I call it a happening.
Yeah.
And let's face it, a lot of these things in happenings you can only record in photographs because there's no point, you're either there enjoying it or you've got the photographs afterwards. That's why so many photographs are taken of a happening.
Yes.
Because you can't actually stage it. It's not like a record that you can replay over and over again.
Oh, no.
You've got to be there to
In fact,
I
in any happenings I've been to, I prefer the photos burnt, and never developed. So the happening somehow, sure, it's been captured and the registration has been made, but in destroying the registration of it makes the image so much more powerful in the memory. I think this sort of imaging thing that one does with happenings and keeping it, in the mind, I think it's much better with happenings like that, just to have someone write about it.
The return of Frank Bruno and taking on the Dutch boy at London's Albert Hall the other night was an absolute feast, wasn't it? Bruno put him away very, very attractively in 3. And if I may, before I get your thoughts on the fight, I'd like to refer to the fact that, in fact, this boy, Eamon, the lad from very well-credentialed fighter...
Scandinavian, Kitty. Holland Dutch, was he?
Dutch boy.
I heard he was Norwegian. Certainly his accent had a touch of the Norwich in it.
Now, he actually has been... very, very attractively linked with the opponent of Kid Boujna the other day. I forget the boy's name. Denroy Bryan might have been the name of the Kid Boujna, Kid Boujna opponent. And it makes me think that the Bruno Boujna, that is Kid Boujna fight, and isn't that something to contemplate? The last fight, of course, that Frank was in, apart from the one the other night, was, of course, against Old Joe, and now he'd be in against Young Joe in the next go-round. And I think that is a prospect. That is a mouth-watering prospect. But what did you make of Frank? I thought coming into the ring with the white stick was a terrific idea. He brought a bit of show business back. The sunglasses on, of course, sat down at the keyboard in the ring there.
Ray Charles style.
That's right, sang the Pepsi ad, and then so he sort of booted it out. And I thought it was very funny, and I was glad to see Frank, because he's going into Panto, I think, Wednesday of this week, has lost none of his skills in either area.
It was very much showbiz, wasn't it, HG? He had the crowd absolutely on side, as you say, white cane, white piano, did a lovely version of Ebony and Ivory, which had a lot of people in tears, and I thought it was fitting that people should be in tears, looking at a bloke who had his retina removed from, or detached from his eye, not so long ago, in about, I think it might have been, was it against Iron Mike Tyson?
It was.
It was against Iron Mike Tyson, yes. And I thought he looked terrific. I had a close look at the eye. I think the cut specialist who worked on it did a wonderful job, a marvellous job, and hats off all round in that department. He's lost nothing. If anything, I think he's a little bit faster. And it's not a word or an adjective one usually associates with the great Frank Bruno, i.e. fast, but I thought he showed glimpses of speed, which might have been partially helped by the great John Emin, in fact, being semi-catatonic, very little movement from the laddie. When the bell went, he just stood there, Frank went over and hammered him. It was as simple as that. He didn't move away from his corner, and he looked distinctly confused at the end of the bout. I had a bit of a word to him, but not that he understood much, only speaking, a sort of Dutch-Norwegian-style accent, or, a bit of Dutch-Norwegian sort of gear. But I did get through to him, and I said to him, John, you've been a dud tonight. You've been slow, you've been stupid, you've been a hapless water buffalo, you've been a joke, all those sort of things. He just shrugged. He went out of the room. I followed him out into the changing rooms, and the laddie was as slow as a wet weed. The laddie was as slow as buggery. I think that it might have been the first time the laddie had ever been in the ring. I don't think the laddie expected to be fighting. I think he was there to watch the match. Or to watch the bout. I think no one was surprised more than he was when he found himself in togs with a couple of gloves wrapped around his fists, and people looking at him and pointing and whistling and cheering and hitting him, Frank Bruno style. I think he was more surprised than anyone else.
Well, I tell you what, I loved his entry when those two blokes came out in the overalls and laid the planks up to the ring and went back, pushed him up in the wheelbarrow and just tipped him into the ring. He was in catatonia if such a place.
This was when the piano was being winched out.
That's right. Tipped him into the ring, and I thought, hello. This has got class written all over this bout. We've seen
I thought he'd won a prize, lucky seat prize.
Like a door prize. You're the opposition tonight, as far as sport. But when they tipped him into the ring, I thought, hello, he's going to leap up in a minute and hit Frank. Yes. He's going to hit somebody. He's going to get feisty. But, of course, he just lay there. And when Frank came over and just, planted one, or they propped him up against the corner post, as you described, when they pulled the stool away and just held his arms behind him, and Frank came over and slammed into him.
Yes, and the gaffer taping his waist to the post, I thought, the corner post, was an interesting idea too, so that he wouldn't fall over, so that Frank could at least get 3 rounds in on him. I thought that was terrific. But I think the problem was one of interpretation. There was no one there who understood Dutch-Norwegian sort of language, and so the protestations coming from the kitty, in as much as, at first it was, I won, terrific, thanks very much, marvellous, where's my prize? And when he started getting cuffed around the head by a very angry Frank Bruno, because the kitty didn't go over and stand in the middle in this, when the instructions were being given out, or touch gloves, there was none of that. He just stood, in his corner. Frank wasn't know he was gaffer taped there. I thought it was a very, very interesting bout, and if that's the way boxing, if that the direction boxing is heading in, I think we're in for a pretty interesting ride, HG.
Yes, best and brightest week since the pocket rocket Peter Reith burst out of the big house Canberra way and began threatening current government employees. And Rocket, I love it! I love it when you start laying on a bit of a threat, son. I love it when you get a bit fruity, a bit blue, and a bit of the lash slips out from underneath your skirt. Keep going, Rocket. The post is too close to stop flogging the dead conveyance now. And any young politician, speaking of golfers, we were a moment ago, any young politician coming into the political caper could learn a lot from the way Rocket tackles a hard question, i.e. by simply avoiding it. Brilliant work, Rocket! Brilliant work, Peter. There's no other pollies going round who do it quite like you, son. Best week since Scasey broke his silence and in a magnificent and moving spray said he was merely a victim of the socialist government in Canberra and simply had a run of outs in a savage conspiracy with the Commonwealth Bank, which tried to dud him. I must say, now that I've heard your side of the story, Chris, I see exactly what you mean, son, and my heart and my wallet go out to you all the way over there in Spain. But, Scasey, what of this allegation that you have a lung complaint instead of a nasty dose of Shagger's back? I respected you more. Roy respected you more. The world respected you more. And you certainly, Scasey, for mine, had a lot more old-fashioned street cred with the Shagger's backstory than this fairy floss, this fluff of the lung ailment.
No, it wouldn't be. If say, someone had been found with blood in a similar circumstance to Mark Tapguy, would he be able to represent Australia in the pentathlon?
I think he could.
Yes, that's my understanding.
I think he could
too. That is my understanding, and that means the Rugby League is it's adopting a moral standpoint, isn't it? I mean, it's really looking at life through the rear vision mirror of the car. and wonders why it keeps bumping into telegraph poles and things as it drives along, doesn't it? I mean, it really does want to take rugby league back to a time when, you could drink water out of creeks. Well, unfortunately, at the moment, you can't drink water out of creeks rugby league, and you've got to accept this.
Well, Roy, just going to this other article, which does clear up a couple of things. The New South Wales Rugby League is the only sporting body in Australia which asked the Australian Sports Drug Agency, which carries out official tests for all Australian sports, to test specifically for marijuana. Now, their view, well, at least, should I say, contrary to the impression created by the New South Wales Rugby League, the league does not have to test for marijuana. Of course, Quayle comes on every half hour onto any media that'll have him, saying about how good cigarettes are for you and how much harm marijuana does for you. Anyway, the New South Wales Rugby League says the drug is on the International Olympic Committee's drug list, but the IOC does not list marijuana as a Class 1 or prohibited drug, such as anabolic steroids, human growth hormone, or even caffeine over a certain amount. Marijuana is classed by the IOC with a class drug 3, in the class drug 3, along with some anaesthetics and some painkillers, Gavin Miller's chest.
Yes.
Ricky's
Scotia's back.
Yes, and lung. The IOC leaves it up to the individual sporting federations to decide whether they want to test for marijuana, and it seems the New South Wales Rugby League is the only sporting body in Australia and one of the few in the world wanting to do so. And, of course, this brought him into a direct competition with Peter Bone, the boss of the ASDA. And, Roy, it's a very cloudy issue, isn't it?
I think it's a cloudy issue. I mean, don't get me wrong here. I'm not suggesting that rugby league players should be, out there on the weed, rolling the green. As you quite rightly say, the consuming of the substance is the punishment in itself. And I can't imagine any rugby league player wanting to be out there in the middle of a scrum, feeling the effects of marijuana. I mean, that would be an absolute nightmare, I would have thought, having the pill come your way when you'd much rather be, sitting on the carpet listening to a bit of Pink Floyd or something of that, or burning a bit of incense or keeping the blinds down. Certainly, I just can't imagine a player wanting to or treat that particular substance as performance enhancing. If anything, it'll be absolutely the opposite.
Well, I was going to say, the only person I know, and I don't have this on actually here, I only have this on hearsay, was the great Brent Tiger Croswell, the great Tasmanian footballer. He once got ripped. The girls before he wanted on, and he was so enchanted by the play that he stood all afternoon watching the seagulls and the trains go by at Glenferrie Oval. But it's easy to understand colour and movement. That's what it's all about, Roy, isn't it?
How was his game?
Well, it was absolutely first class. He really put in. I was going to say, Johnny Black from the committee that investigated all this relationship, the Senate inquiry into drugs in sport, said that it was interesting, of course, that the league tested for one possibly performance detracting drug such as marijuana. Then it should test for other such drugs, including
such as nicotine
and associated tobacco chemicals and alcohol. And he points out that most bongs or marijuana cigarettes involve mixing of tobacco and marijuana. So why ban only half the ingredients? Very salient point, Mr. Black. He went on to say it's often found.
Oh, they're mixing a mull. You're getting a mull together, are they?
No. You're sort of bit of green, bit of
tobacco.
That's
what you call a mull.
Oh. Sorry, for a minute there, I thought you'd gone. Mull, obviously Mulligan Tyre, Paul McCartney. Well, it grows very green up there. What had gone into compost?
Well, that's what I always understood by Mulligan Tyre. It was an enormous reefer that Paul had made.
Now, what he points out is, of course, it's often found from passive smoking. The marijuana in the long jimmy that you give to the drug testing authority. So if a player is in a room full of people smoking marijuana, he could test positive. But he said so.
In the same way, passive smokers you can have nicotine in your bloodstream if you happen to share a lift with someone who's lit up.
Isn't it funny? I find the telling point though here is that they don't test for performance-reducing substances.
Well, and
if they did,
marijuana.
The players should be banned because of bringing the game into ill repute.
Yeah. Well, I think that's fair enough. I think if the rugby league came out of the closet, so to speak, and said, performance reducing drugs are not okay.
Oh, right, yes.
Therefore, players, quite rightly then, would be shown the door if they had marijuana in their bloodstream or nicotine or alcohol. Sure, why not? Be even-handed rugby league. Be straight as a die rugby league. Take the gloves off rugby league. Take the shorts off. Give us a look. Show us your line and length.
Yes, can we borrow your bong, Arco? Concern me this first story in Hollywood Nights today because it concerns a very, very fine couple, Melanie Griffiths and Don Johnson. And sure, they've had a run of outs in the past. They've had a couple of trial separations and got back together again. They've bought a couple of ranches together and sold them. They've done a lot of shows and brought a lot of life and cheerfulness into the cinemas and television sets of the world. But I'm sad to say that Don has banned Melanie from making a film with the ageing great Sean Connery. Now, I'm not quite sure why. Don, of course, 41, Miami Vice, etc., admitted to me exclusively for This Sporting Life during the week that Melanie has a crush on Sean. So I, Don, have forbidden her to work with him. Of course, she just laughs at me and goes ahead and signs contracts anyway. But what has Sean got that Don hasn't?
HG, it's a conundrum that people have fiddled about with and worried about for a long, long time. All I can say is this, that I've heard stories of when Errol Flynn would walk into a room. Now, whether it was the cut of the lad's jib downstairs or not, I don't know. But there was something that said, I've got a secret that I'm willing to share. And I don't think, to give him his due, and if Errol was still around, he wouldn't mind me saying that Errol wasn't backwards in coming forwards in delivering the secret broadcast style to anyone who would linger long enough horizontally to listen. It's to do with, people call it pheromones, that somehow Errol oozed some sort of sensual, sexual quality that penetrated the air and got people loosening up in the most interesting sort of way imaginable. And yet, I say to myself, it defies logic. You cannot have pheromones coming off a screen. To look at Errol, in black and white on television or at the cinema, say when he was doing Gentleman Jim, when he was playing Gentleman Jim Corbett, or when he was precursing the excellent work of Richard Green in playing Robin Hood. There was something even on the cinema, and I've been in cinemas where Errol's been on, and I've looked around and I've seen a lot of uncrossed legs. There was some magic that he brings that can create and bring about actual physical change inside people, which is great. And I think Sean might carry a little bit of this himself. Sure, we can call it charisma that Prince Metternich might have had in years gone by in Austria. Sure, there are a lot of people who, loosely go into the title womanizers. But Sean is a man of very few words from the tie up. But anywhere south of the belt is screaming. It's a non-stop conversation, diatribe, argument that's happening. And people love to listen. People of both sexes, and I use this advisedly, and I'm saying nothing about Sean that I haven't said to his face time and time again. I think the problem with Don Johnson, and I think Don might enjoy walking on both sides of the street at the same time. And I don't hold that against him. I think he's a terrific bloke for it. I think that's fine. And I think this may have brought about some sort of harbouring grudges against Melanie, who's always wanted to do a very, very interesting little bit of nude lambada work with Sean. And I think if, say, she was to extend the warm arm of friendship and say to Don, hey, why don't we make it a threesome, then I don't think we'd have a problem.
Beautifully put. I would say this about Sean. If he was to walk into the room here, into the Mormal Room in the Metropolis Concert Club, the front of the trouser would arrive approximately 5 minutes before the big man himself.
And that would be before he got excited.
Now, Roy, another secret.
He grows a very big beard.
Oh, you see, yeah, indeed he does. Indeed he does. Now, he has to shave approximately every 4 minutes. Now, and then they call it the 5 o'clock shadow after 3.5. Now, what I was going to say, another mystery, of course, is the Earl Macpherson, the new man in Earl Macpherson's life. Now, I for all the world and all the money in the world thought it was DK Lilly. I know the knowledgeable crowd in the Mormal Room saw a beautiful bit of footage that I saw of DK and Elle at the ball at the Grand Prix in Adelaide not so long ago. Interestingly enough, beautiful use of words, Grand and Prix, Sean Connery style.
Who was the most excited, Elle or DK?
Well, I basically had it as a dead heat with a lot of daylight running second. And If anybody remembers that fond embrace that the old, well, let's face it, the old Australian fast bowler, I use the words not unkindly there, and, the way he moved, well, he still got it, and if Australia is looking for somebody to carry the new ball here at the whacker, up the breeze, into the breeze, then I think I'd be penciling in D.K. Lilly, because let's face it...
D.K. Lilly has always been described to me as a man who, off the paddock, is quite happy to enjoy a wet or dry track.
Isn't he, Roy? Now, L. McPherson. Now, according to Jan Gamblin, the great Jan Gamblin, who, let's face it, puts himself about in the most attractive way, but can't deliver what Sean can, or Errol, or DK. Now, both he and L have new partners since they separated in July. He said to me exclusively for This Sporting Life, he said, I can't tell you who L is going out with, but I can say it is someone very well known. Who is it, Roy?
Well, there was talk of it being Geoffrey Kennett.
Denver Beanland.
Denver Beanland was mentioned. There have been a lot of people mentioned, but we know now who it is, and we can broadcast it here on This Sporting Life. You're hearing it. This is a first amongst many, many firsts. And I know no one will be disappointed. No one will be surprised by the news that the new mystery man in the life of L. McPherson is none other than Ayrton Senna. Now, Ayrton Senna, you may recall, was the first person when Elle came last in the Celebrity Grand Prix to run up and congratulate her. And think about it, he's a bloke who had Grand Prix on his mind, who had Formula One on his mind, who had a wet track on his mind. And who had the presence of mind to go over and have a bit of a yell with Elle. One thing led to another, and apparently satisfaction was guaranteed all round. All I know is Elle said to me, he's a champ, he's a beaut, Roy, he's no problems, everything's A-OK downstairs. And I don't think anyone would be surprised about that. Anyone who's been close to Ayrton Senna, as you and I have been, HG's a terrific bloke. He's what I call a very willing customer. He's very, say, Sean Connery, he can be very quiet, but very loud where it counts downstairs. Sport and sex have always danced a very, very attractive cha-cha. For many, many years, or a rumba. Certainly these days we'd say lambada, or a couple of years ago we might have done. It's always been a very attractive, very erotic dance, and a very happy dance, I might say, too. But I think cricket and sex, there's a special something about a cricketer that just says, come on, baby, come on down.
Well, it's like the Stones, isn't it? I mean, there's lots of bands.
If the Stones, baby, Stones, if the Stones were a sport, they'd be cricket.
That's right, they'd be cricket.
They'd all be dressed in flannel, and they'd probably be, I don't know, probably cover fieldsmen who wouldn't mind rolling the arm over and batting number 6.
But I just want to say 2 words to you. I want to say Stumpy and Merv.
Stumpy and Merv,
you
right,
talk about,
case.
Indeed, you're talking about fantastically fit and attractive men in your Sean Connery, in your anatomy, Errol Flynn, in your anatomy adjusting style.
Oh, I agree with you. It's no surprise. Say in the Eddie McNaughton stakes, I'd say Stumpy Boone and Mervyn, Swervin Mervyn would be Australia's what we'd call Big Two. There was always a Big Two in any team.
Like Richie and Bill Laurie.
Well, the first time I toured HG, I was a very young kiddie then with Arbeno and Kate Stackpole. Stacky was the big one, and he and Richie were the big two. And we admired their kudos was terrific, and they were very confident players. And the more successful they were in the bed stakes, the better they played, I always felt. So I always encourage safe sex these days on behalf of cricketers in particular, because cricketers, they've only got to walk out the door, they've just got to leave the dressing room, and the opportunities for rampant, steamy, passionate sex is there. I mean, I've seen Warren Beatty on the job, and I was very impressed with his handiwork. But I'd have to say that it pales into insignificance when compared with the great work of, say, Les Favell,
Invers,
Richie Robinson,
Andrew Hilditch.
Invers you mentioned, Andrew Hilditch, Glenn Bishop,
Hooksy. Wayne Phillips.
Wayne Phillips.
Timmy Zura.
They are what I would call each of them. I mean, I can't think of an Australian cricketer who isn't a sort of sexual Lothario.
Machine.
They are an uncompromising, piston-like sexual machine. There's no two ways about it. Grafted out of titanium.